It's Friday, the 29th of October, 2021. Welcome to Fear and Greed, the business podcast that sets you up for a successful day. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
ANZ reports a bumper profit but concedes it missed out on the home loan boom. That's our main story. Also this morning, Qantas outlines the new rules around travelling overseas, a tragic day on the COVID front, and the list of the richest young Australians is released. Then stay listening for my chat to John O'Brien, the founder of one of Australia's big franchise success stories. But first, Sean, ANZ kicked off the bank profit season yesterday with what is probably best described as a mixed result.
Yes, Michael, I think that's a fair characterisation. ANZ Bank, the country's fourth largest bank and sixth largest company, said its cash profit was up 65% to $6.2 billion, helped by the release of money previously set aside for bad loans. But ANZ has pretty much missed out on the home lending boom, with home loan volumes stagnating as competitors lent significantly more. Now, boss Shane Elliott said the bank just wasn't prepared for the unbelievable levels of buying and selling in the home loan market. And he said that was his fault. But ANZ was back in the market now, Mr. Elliott said. The bank's expenses were slightly higher, while its net interest income, that's the difference between what the bank pays on deposits and receives from lending, was up, which analysts said was a pretty good effort in a low interest rate environment. Its New Zealand business did well, and Mr. Elliott pointed out that sustainable finance will be a mega trend impacting the global economy for years to come.
What else did he have to say about the economy?
Well, he said it would be an uneven road to recovery, and the real impacts of COVID-19 wouldn't be felt until at least the end of next year. It's really interesting for a CEO to say that. He warned that while it was great vaccination rates were high, COVID was, and this is his quote, a living, mutating organism, and it wasn't over yet. But the bank's economists are generally upbeat about the outlook. And incidentally, Michael, the Commonwealth Bank's economists yesterday upped their growth forecast for the economy and tipped that interest rates could rise late next year.
All right, so what did ANZ investors think of the result, though?
Well, many of the retail investors liked the fact that ANZ upped its dividend. And the professional investors were pretty happy too, pushing ANZ's share price up 0.7% on a day where markets went backwards.
So how did the rest of the market perform?
It was a pretty crazy day, really, with some huge moves. In the end, the S&P ASX finished just 0.3% lower to 7,430 points. But Michael, let me run through some of the big moves. PointsBet's share price fell 18% yesterday. That's massive, after it said it was spending heavily as part of its aggressive push into the US. Now, this is the company that uses basketball legend Shaquille O'Neal as a brand ambassador. PointsBet's share price rose nearly 1,200% from March last year to February this year, but it has almost halved since then. That was one. Whitehaven Coal's share price fell 11% yesterday in early trading before finishing 5% lower. Australia's biggest coal miner has benefited in recent months from surging coal prices, but as prices have tempered, investors have really sold out. Wealth manager IOOF said institutional and retail investors had pulled $2.3 billion from its funds and platforms during the September quarter. But investment returns had added more than $5 billion to the group's total assets. The outflows triggered an 8.5% fall in its share price. There are also big jumps in a bunch of building material companies. Boral, Reece and Reliance Worldwide all rose more than 4%. Crazy day.
Yeah, you're right. That was a crazy day. What about overseas markets?
Wall Street jumped sharply overnight as the earnings season continues. Caterpillar and Ford both released better than anticipated profits overnight. It came after figures showed that US economic growth slowed considerably during the September quarter to a 2% annualised rate due to supply chain disruptions and a resurgence of COVID-19. European markets were flat after the European Central Bank rebuffed expectations that interest rates in the region would rise next year. Now, people were thinking that because inflation in Germany and Spain have hit multi-decade highs recently. The Aussie dollar is worth 75.4 US cents, oil is trading a touch lower, and gold is worth $1,800 an ounce.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, plenty of stories around this morning. 27 deaths from COVID were announced yesterday. That's the worst toll since the current outbreak began. It's a fairly sobering reminder that we're still in the midst of a pandemic.
Yes, it is, Michael. 25 deaths were recorded in Victoria and 1,923 cases, and 2 deaths in New South Wales and 293 cases. In better COVID news, Australia hit a 75% vaccination rate yesterday, which has taken more than 35 million doses. The first rate dose for Australians 16 years and older is now almost 88%. ACT is the standout with a vaccination rate now of more than 91%.
Sean, Qantas has been informing passengers of the new rules from Monday, and there's a few of them, when international flights reopen.
Yes, it's all very exciting, but I must say it's probably going to be a bit less relaxing than it used to be if you're travelling. Travellers were advised to arrive at least 4.5 hours early to check into their international flights.
Wow.
Those check-in desks will be open 4 hours early. Normally they're open 3 hours early, but they're expecting a rush. If you are travelling, you'll need the new Australian-issued International COVID-19 Vaccination Certificate and also the IATA, the IATA Travel Pass, which is an international group. Passengers will also receive texts or emails about the forms and COVID tests they need to complete and download. Masks must be worn during the entire journey unless people are eating or drinking, and the airline is pushing customers to have comprehensive travel insurance, including COVID-19 cover. It is a whole new world for travellers.
Yeah, you can say that again. Right, moving away from COVID now, and disgraced ex-Liberal MP Darryl Maguire was on the stand in the ICAC hearings in New South Wales yesterday. Pretty sensational stuff.
Sure was. He said he and former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian considered getting married and having a baby during their 5-year relationship, which ended last year. The inquiry is into whether Ms Berejiklian breached the public trust over the granting of $5.5 million for a clay pigeon shooting facility promoted by Maguire. Now, Mr Maguire said he would have discussed the bid for the funding with Ms Berejiklian. The further the inquiry goes, the closer the relationship seems to have been between the two. Though, of course, we haven't heard from Ms Berejiklian as yet. We expect to hear from her today.
Now, the Financial Review has released its annual list of the wealthiest young Australians. Who made it?
Oh, well, Michael, I'm not sure how I think about these lists. I mean, celebrating wealth for wealth's sake is slightly tasteless, but you've got to admire these people under the age of 40 worth so much money.
You know what? I don't actually mind them too much, Sean. It just gives me a bit of a glimpse into a life that I don't think I'll be quite able to attain.
You never know. You never know. Since it's under the age of 40, I certainly can never attain it. Canva co-founders Cliff Obrecht and Melanie Perkins are a married couple. They were numbers 1 and 2 with a combined fortune of $16.5 billion. Pretty good. Next is Afterpay founder Nick Molnar, worth around $2.9 billion, thanks to the deal to sell the business to US-based Square Inc., which is owned by Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter. Fourth on the list is Lawrence Escalante, worth $2.7 billion. Now, you may not have heard of him, but his business, Virtual Gaming Worlds, benefited from lockdowns in the US. Virtual gaming offers online pokies, poker, and blackjack tables in the US. He's done very well out of that one. And rounding out the top 5 is Sam Prince, the Canberra-based former medical student who started Mexican food chain Zembrero.
I love the fact that there is a $14 billion gap between numbers 1 and 2 on the list. It's quite incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible, though. I must say that 1 and 2 combined is 16.5. So let's say it's about a $5 billion gap.
Yeah, still not too bad. Canva is an incredible success story. Okay, Sean, what's making headlines in today's news media?
Well, the Financial Review is reporting that French President Emmanuel Macron scolded Scott Morrison for a breach of trust over Australia's decision to axe the $90 billion submarine contract with France's naval group in the first conversation between the pair since the decision last month. Associated Press is reporting that President Joe Biden has reached a historic economic framework with Democrats in Congress on his domestic policy package, which includes massive climate change spending. Good timing, given he's heading to Glasgow shortly. And Michael, in breaking news this morning, Facebook has announced it will change its name to Meta, M-E-T-A. Mark Zuckerberg said the name reflected the company's focus on developing the metaverse. It's a change to the holding company name. The brand name will remain Facebook.
Running through some of the other stories around today, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, gave one final press conference before heading to Glasgow for the United Nations Climate Change Summit. He said Australia is beating COVID, although there are still some difficult days ahead. Mr Morrison rejected overseas criticism about his government's climate change commitments, adding that he will discuss more than climate change next week. A gathering of G20 leaders will also be held, and Mr Morrison is going to ask world leaders to address social media harm, which is a very good cause for Australia to be getting behind.
Absolutely agree with you there, Michael. The highly regarded Speaker of the House, Tony Smith, who has already announced he'll step down at the next election, yesterday resigned as the parliamentary umpire. He said he wanted to spend his remaining time in Canberra looking after the interests of his constituents in the Melbourne seat of Casey. Good luck to Tony, a very nice fella.
Yeah, and seems to be very well regarded in the role of Speaker. He'll be missed.
From both sides of politics too.
Yeah, pretty rare that. The Australian Prudential Regulation Authority has warned that the climate change-induced extreme weather events are likely to push up the cost of insurance for households in some areas, and there is the potential for this then to flow through to mortgage costs as well.
And finally, Michael, some very important news from Aussie Post. With new records for parcel deliveries this year already set, the delivery service is expected to surpass last year's 52 million parcels just for the month of December. So, if you want to send a parcel, do so by December 13, Aussie Post is saying. And if it's a Christmas card, do people do that? My mother does. Do it by 16 December.
Very few people, I think. I reckon your mother might be in the extreme minority these days.
I think so.
Now, Sean, what's the key overseas news this morning?
Well, the Bank of Japan has left interest rates on hold but cut its growth outlook, blaming it on COVID-19. The central bank believes the world's third largest economy is heading for a modest recovery. Remember, Japan is Australia's third largest trade partner. We sell lots of gas, coal, iron ore and beef, among other things, to Japan, so its outlook matters to Australia. Toyota, the world's number one car maker, said production last month was down almost 40% from a year earlier, hit by delays to accessing semiconductor chips and other parts. Global sales were down 16% for the month. Other Japanese car makers, including Honda and Nissan, have also indicated lower volumes. And finally, China is cracking down on vegetable hoarding. Yes, vegetable hoarding. Veggie prices have surged in China in recent weeks and in some cases cost more than meat. Wholesale prices are up 28% over the past 4 weeks. Cauliflower and broccoli costs are up more than 50%, and the cost of the humble bunch of spinach is up more than 150%. Crazy. Heavy rain and soaring energy prices have pretty much hit food costs.
I can think of plenty of things I would hoard before I hoard vegetables.
Certainly cauliflower and broccoli and spinach.
Yeah, you know what? They're welcome to those ones. Now, up next is the Daily Interview, and today we're speaking to John O'Brien, the founder of Poolworks. It's a really interesting business, that one. It's a franchise model, and he's had a lot of success with it because it's one of those jobs that everyone thinks they'll be able to manage their own pool and actually then find out that it's quite a bit of hard work.
Absolutely. I've got a pool and I love my pool guy. He comes all the time. It's an interview that you did, Michael, so I'm really looking forward to hearing it.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. That is up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael. Have a great day.
It's Friday, the 29th of October, 2021. Make sure you've followed Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. And you can always find more information at fearandgreed.com.au, where you can also sign up for our free daily newsletter. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.